I'm Tom Francis, and this is Next Up to the Mic. On this episode, we're featuring poet and writer James H Duncan, who is one of the spoken word artists who graced the stage live at the Linda on December 17th, 2021. James is the editor of Hobo Camp Review and the author of We Are All Terminal, But This Exit Is Mine, Vacancy, and Beyond the Wounded Horizon, among other books of poetry and fiction. He is currently working on a new collection about his two hometowns, Albany and San Antonio, and he continues to visit and review independent bookstores across the country for his blog, The Bookshop Hunter. You can find his books at www.jameshduncan.com. Please welcome, next up to the mic, James H. Duncan.
Thanks, everybody, for coming out tonight as we reflect on this last crazy year. Over the last year, I've been thinking a lot about my hometown of Albany, New York, as noted, and so I thought I would share a few of those with you tonight since, hey, we're in Albany, so why not? And this first one is aptly titled, Albany. Of my city, the worst I've ever said was, "You are the grayest city in America. And you are where fun goes to die." Stranger after stranger would smirk and nod at my terrible jokes of home, and yet they knew nothing of you. I knew nothing of you, having left so young and spent so long taking and acquiring and stealing and cataloging memories and knowledge and mileage. And now I see with eyes renewed the green foliage billowing along the Hudson as blue tarpaulin skies range across the distant hills, the floodplains and tumbling kills named by Dutch tongues and indigenous translations, spawning colonies and crafters, pillars and plowshares, steelworks and highways, bridges and theaters, thinkers and grifters, children and yard bowls, empty homes and barren fields, raised fists and rainbow crosswalks. Long nights and the faintest hints of dawn yet to rise, but striving and yearning, and I knew nothing of such inspirations, such visions, such Saturday nights and cemetery Wednesdays, and the long avenues of reckless rain that connect them. And nowadays, I might find myself with a book of Carl Sandburg beneath a tree in Washington Park and think, with dust on my shoe from one coast or another, that I have arrived full circle in this city with all its joy and loss and lapping waves and neon palace nights will be the end of me, the last yellow leaf falling from its final perch in the late October wind, reaching the ground, skittering, settling into the earth, so time and snow and age beyond age may take me wherever this spinning globe is heading next. Thank you. This is Skyway. Now the workers in hard hats are back from their lunch and drilling away with their pneumatic jackhammers as some pick up this cone and move it here, pick up that one and move it there. The long trek into the Skyway, reshaping the old highway on-ramp into a sweeping park rising into the blue eastern sky and down to the curb of the Hudson River with the hope that accessibility might alter the fate of such a misfortune. A city turning its back on its greatest treasure, the running, ruined channels of the river that now calls to us from its banks at night when even the stars and moon cannot reflect without pity and regret. And so the workers churn through the blacktop and hew at steel with casual grit to reshape the city one season at a time. Future Skyway debris dancing like dust motes through the downtown avenues and side streets. The sounds of our collective hope hammering away as children wait, as food vendors wait, as older couples wait hand in hand on their way to some movie house or repertory theatrical. Young couples off to dinner and wild nights at pubs and taverns, lining the cobbled streets of Lark and Pearl and avenues throughout overlooked Albany. All of them waiting for the Skyway into the dawn and all life's promises that lie in wait beyond. Thank you. This one goes out to anybody who's ever lived in East Greenbush. Jaws of Memory. That motel and the seafood restaurant next door stood just down the street on Columbia Turnpike for what felt like centuries. And as a kid, I always thought they were this fancy escape, this place where adults would go for fine food and vacations, not understanding small-town desperation and the downward spiral of minor upstate communities in the 1980s. And now that restaurant with the fake lighthouse is gone. And by the end of its days, the motel beside it housed only the suffering and the burned out, the addicts, the broken, the poor, the lost. And after a fire, that too disappeared. as all things do in time, leaving another pulled tooth in the jaws of memory, closing to darkness, swallowing whole. Oh, thank you. So as noted, I do have a blog where I travel to bookshops and review them, or pretty much just promote them. Ravenous about bookstores, and I found an old copy of a great book of poetry in a secondhand store recently in Columbia County this last year. And this is a poem about that book. It is called A Splinter. My used copy of Harvest Poems 1910 to 1960 by Carl Sandburg has the inscription, purchased in Connemara, Ireland, 1996, where goat's milk fudge was being sold. And on page 82, there's a newspaper clipping from the Fayetteville Times about a ceremony in Flat Rock celebrating Carl's body of work. A clipping yellowed by time in the sun, held flat against a poem reading, "The voice of the last cricket across the first frost is one kind of goodbye. It is so thin a splinter of singing." A finer poem I've never written, or read for that matter. And that is why I advise you to never buy books new for all the treasure you might leave behind. Okay. As I mentioned earlier to Tom, that this poem is about a house in particular that anyone who lived, lives, or might live on Pine Avenue will recognize. It's called Who Lives There? Who lives there, people ask when they see it. The house on the corner, something between colonial mansion and Tudor, and I see people stop at the corner and look up. I stand there with my coffee and look up too. Everyone looks up. They don't see the intricate painted glass windows along the basement, or the rabbits who make burrows in the old rose bushes. They look up at the dark wood beams along the roof. They look up at the spires and garrets, the ghosts in the windows, the old TV antenna, the slate tiles covered in moss. No one lives there. And it used to be an old daycare center, but it's empty now, and sometimes you see ghosts in there. I wasn't going to skip over that part. I just wanted to let it settle into place. Sometimes when it rains, you need to let the pools of water settle until you can see the bottom with calm, pristine vision. Can you see the ghosts now? Top right window? Sometimes top left. So what? Big deal. Every house is haunted a little. Sometimes only the dust buddies know, but they're there. They don't usually see you or bother you because they think they're alive too, going about their business. But if they do see you, they think you are the sudden intrusion, the spectral wonderment of astroplanes beyond. We're all alive and living in these houses, and sometimes we see each other and think, what was that? Then some people make TV shows about that, carry equipment and superstition into house after house, broadcast their pantomimes out across the seas and the mountains, zipping into countless TV antenna. But usually we leave each other alone. They stare down at me with my coffee and think, what is that man doing? And I look up and think, ghost, upper left window. But it used to be a daycare center for little kids, and that must have been weird for everyone. What are all these kids doing in here? Then the kids went away, leaving it empty. Soon enough, however, someone will move into that house. There's a U-Haul truck pulling up outside just now, an orange and silver one with a big illustration of the St. Louis Arch on the side, but the plates say New Jersey. I hope they like the stained glass windows and the rabbits and the beautiful wraparound porch that extends out into the yard, cantilevered beneath a towering pine tree. It's a beautiful house, the house on the corner, the one that makes people ask who lives there. We're all going to find out soon, I hope. Thank you. This is the last one for me. It's called Love Wild. Can you fathom the meaning of love? Bottle rockets popping in the sunlight, coming from all directions. Sit in the cemetery grass mowed and bristled as all the other families arrive by the carload, Albany across the river to the west, and can you feel the weight of anticipation in the air? Isn't that love? Isn't it? Broad oak canopies like green thunderheads shade headstones and minivans alike. Children squirming in the laps of mothers as fathers swat away black flies. Almost time. Almost here. The horizon scarlet melding purple, breathing black, almost here, almost time. The war of the worlds in one fire punch exposition. And there they go. Reflective dazzlements in the eyes of toddlers crowding around, their heartbeats radiant in the warm tide of summer nights. Endless screams in public pools, ice cream trucks prowling their delights before turning September's corner into rolling hills of green and yellow. Yellow and orange, orange and red, red and brown, brown glowing wild and reflective jack-o'-lantern light flickering out from every stoop and window throughout Pine Hills. Buckingham Lake, Green Island, the steep ascents throughout Arbor Hill, Center Square and Sheridan Hollow, Rensselaer, Castleton, Delmar's Four Corners. Hunkered homes bracing against autumn, winds snapping their teeth, bearing winter claws white and sharp, and then it comes, the bluster and wild snows from Great Lakes beyond, and we fortify our souls with lights and candles and pine and love, ages passing from one year to the next. The weight of life piling deep, too deep to shovel out, too cold and too steep and too late the rising sun, the sun rising, melting the bite, thaws draining into gutters of slush, and somehow the bare arms and bones of the trees know it. They show it, budding into days bright and blue, and even the rain feels fresh and breathless in the joy of another winter behind us. The grass growing thick and heady, the elms, maples, tulips in Washington Park blooming in tune with the great turning clock hands unseen, until the explosions in the sky circulate and spin, rain down like cascading palm trees or double helix hearts, the pop and crackle excitations reflecting in the eyes of toddlers crowding around their lawn chairs, straining to see, squirming in their mothers' laps as fathers swat at black flies before the long walk home, the traffic, the beds waiting for sleepyheads. Can you feel it? Is that love? Is it? Because if it isn't, it's something close enough to make this great journey worth it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Next Up to the Mic. We couldn't do it without our generous community. If you would like to support this and other Hudson Valley Writers Guild projects, please go to hvwg.org to donate and to become a member. And if you're a business and want to sponsor this podcast, send an email to info@hvwg.org. To find out more about this great literary and arts community that we have here in upstate New York, go to hvwg.org and be sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at HV Writers Guild.